Hello, my unique queens. Quiana Unique here. Welcome back to my channel. We are going to make another pair of wrap pants, but this time we're going to make it with a comfortable, cozy gauze fabric. This is 100% cotton. So we're about to get started, but before we get started, go ahead and hit that subscription button and the notification bell right next to it so you won't miss out on any of my future videos. And while you're at it, hit the like button if you like wrap pants. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing you're going to need to do is measure how long you want the pants to be. Then you're going to measure your crotch seam area. Mine is 20 inches, and then we're going to add 2 inches for your waistband and seam allowance. After that, you want to measure the widest part of your body, which would be your hips, your thighs, your butt. And mine came up to a whopping 42 inches. Anyway, we're going to use that to make sure that our fabric is going to wrap around us quite well without having to do any extra. So what I'm going to do here, I have the fabric folded in half like I did at the beginning of the video. And I am going to measure long ways down the 32 inches. My pants are going to be 30 inches in length, and then I'm going to fold the top for the waistband 2 inches or so, and then there's going to be some seam allowance there at the bottom. But what you want to make sure that you do is get a nice straight line, because we are going to be using all of this fabric. I got 2 yards of fabric, but you probably will need more yards if your measurements are a little bit larger than mine, or if you're taller than me. I'm only 5'3", so hey, you're gonna need more if you are taller or wider. Okay, now what I did is I took a piece of the fabric and I folded it in half again, and it is now long ways. And what you want to do is take your crotch measurement and divide it by 2, and you get 11 inches. And so you want to go down 11 inches and make that mark. Next, you want to take that 11 inches and you're going to divide it by 2 again, and you're going to get 5.5 inches. And we're going to make a mark across the top at 5.5. Now that we have those 2 measurements there, those 2 lines marked, we're going to draw a curve arch around, because this is going to be your crotch area, and we want to make sure that that is a nice curve, no zigzags, no straight lines, a curve. And then after we curve that, we are going to cut it out. Now I am using a rotary cutter, but if you do not have a rotary cutter, you can use scissors to do this. Just make sure that your fabric is nice and aligned, so that way you won't mess up anything. And now what I did is I put that piece of fabric on top of the other piece of fabric, and I'm cutting out that crotch seam so that way they are the same. And then once I am done with that, you should have, just like I have, 2 pieces, one for your front and one for your back. Now what we're going to do is put one on top of the other with it completely laid out, and we're going to sew them together right in the crotch seam. Now you want to make sure that your fabric is the right side facing inward, so that way you will have the best side of your fabric showing. Now with this fabric, it's really hard to tell, so I just kind of eyeballed it and made sure that I went the same way for all of the fabric. Now that I have the 2 pieces sewn together, I am going to be my own dress stand, and I'm going to pin this to my clothing so that way I can show you the next step that we're supposed to do. So you're going to find your front seam area and pin it to you. Then you're going to get your back seam area and pin it to you. And mine fell off, so I'm going to do it again. But you want to make sure that it lines up with the actual seam in the clothing that you're wearing, which made it much easier. Then you're going to take your front piece and your back piece of one leg, and you're going to bring them together. Now what we're going to do to make this different from the pair of wrap pants that I made before is that we're actually going to close it at the top. So what I did is I took my front piece, I folded it into the back piece, and then I'm going to pin this together, and we're just going to do a stitch right up here, and then we're making sure that it's not fitting our body, because we're going to need to get in this and we're going to put elastic in the waistband, so we do need some space to work with. And as you can see, I did that to the other side, making sure that I have plenty enough space to get out of these pair of pants. And I'm going to make a pin there as well. Then I'm going to take out these pins in the front and the back and slide right out of these. And once I do that, I'm going to sew a stitch there to hold them together. Now with our leftover fabric that we took off, we are going to measure 10 inches by 36, which is the full folded piece. This is still folded in half, still folded piece, and I'm marking my 10 inches. Now this is how much extra fabric that I needed to go into the front, and so I'm measuring it and I am cutting it off. Now one thing that I did not do that you definitely should do is, once you find your top and your bottom piece of this fabric, you want to make sure that you taper it downward. So your bottom end of your fabric, which will be closest to your feet, will be 10 inches wide, but the top piece you want to taper it down to 5, and that's so when we get ready to tie it to the front, it won't overlap. So now I am cutting this off, but do remember to taper down. Last thing with this is to divide your two pieces. After you do this, you will have a left side and a right side. Now with our leftover fabric, it's time to create our ruffle strips. I'm making mine 3 inches, and I had a total of 6 inches in fabric left over, so I'm just going to simply cut straight down the middle of this by folding, and now I have my 2 pieces. Now with the panels we just cut out, it's time to attach them to the back portion of our pants. And I simply moved the front panel out of the way, and I'm going to pin along the sides of each one of these, and we're going to sew them together. I wanted to make sure to once again tell you that you could taper down right here at this point if you did not cut your taper, but you want 5 extra inches or so, and this is all based on my measurements. Your measurements may be different, but definitely you want your full length at the bottom, and then you're going to take about half of that and have it once you get to the top, and you're going to pin all of this together and take it to the sewing machine for sewing. Now we're at the sewing machine, and I wanted to show you how to actually sew this fabric. So I am sewing a straight stitch first, and then I'm going to go back with a zigzag stitch. I do not have a serger machine, so I wanted to show you guys, if you're going to use this particular kind of fabric, that you're going to have to do this when it comes to your interseams. So right here I am now doing a zigzag stitch for this. Now the other option when it comes to making hems and things like that is that you can fold it and fold it again, and then all you have to do is a straight stitch. But for these inner pieces, I am doing a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch to finish off those edges. Now it's time to create our ruffles. So this is the fabric that we cut out, and we're going to need to first finish the sides of them so that way they don't start fraying and ripping apart. So I'm simply folding it as I'm sewing, and I'm going to do a straight stitch and then go back and do a zigzag stitch. One thing that I recommend that you do is to do this to both ends of the fabric, as well as zigzag stitch for it if you're using this kind of fabric, because it frays like crazy. As you can see, I only did one side, but anyway, lesson learned. So now what we're going to do is loosen the tension as well as make our stitch gaps much wider, and we're going to do a straight stitch right along the top part of this fabric, so that way we'll be able to ruffle it. Now I did this 2 times per strips of fabric, and I believe the total length of the fabric is 72 inches or somewhere along that line. So I have 2 pieces of that, and I'm just going to do straight stitch all the way through 2 times, so that way we'll have something to use to gather our fabric for our ruffles. Now that we have it all done, I'm simply taking 2 pieces of the string, and holding on to those as I push the fabric up. Now you want to do this very gentle, because if you break the thread, then you have to go to the sewing machine and do it all over again. But I'm simply pushing it up and gathering it and then sliding it down, so that way we can have this distributed throughout the whole entire length of the fabric to create our ruffles. Now you can make this as wavy and ruffly as you want, but I wanted mine to be very subtle, so that way I would have enough fabric. Okay, now we're back at the pants, and the piece that we added on, I don't like the straight bottom, so I am adding a curve to it. And one thing that I may say is that I wanted mine longer than the pants themselves, but if you want yours the exact same length, then of course this would be the time to cut it the exact same length and then add that curve detail in. And I'm going to overlap this so that way my left side matches my right side. Now that I've done that, we're going to add the ruffle onto the pants. I'm starting at the bottom because I want to make sure that it goes all the way to the bottom, and we want to make sure that we leave some top available so we can add on our straps. Now it's time to create those straps. So with the crotch piece that I cut out, I'm simply using that. It is already folded in half, and I'm going to cut right down that straight line and then divide these into 2 pieces. Now we have our left and our right, and I'm going to fold it once again, and then I'm going to cut right along that curve that you see there, and this is going to create our straps. And what I really liked about this is not a straight strap, it has a little bit of style, and you're simply going to sew along this edge and then turn them right side out. Now we are measuring for our waistband. I have 3/8 inch elastic here, and I'm simply measuring my waist, but I'm leaving about 2 inches here so that way it will stretch and hold snug. Now if your elastic is thicker than mine, then you want to leave less space, like maybe about 1 inch. Now what we're going to do is fold and pin for our elastic casing for our waistband, and since mine is not very wide, I am taking it and measuring only about 1/2 inch and folding downward, and I'm pinning it. And when you get to the sides, you want to make sure that you pin and fold, but do not sew your extra piece of fabric down, because you don't want that to not be able to sway forward. And then once you have this all pinned together, you're going to take it to the sewing machine, do a straight stitch, but most importantly, you want to make sure that you leave a gap so you're able to put your elastic in. Now it's time to put the elastic in. I'm putting a safety pin at the end, and I'm going to use the safety pin to guide the elastic through. And you're going to take your time and push that through until you get all the way to the other end. Once you have both pieces meeting, you want to sew those 2 pieces together. You can use your machine and do a zigzag stitch or a couple straight stitches, and that part will be done, and then you'll sew it closed. Now it is time to finish off all of our raw edges as well as add our straps on so we can tie this together. So what I'm doing is I'm folding my edges here, and I'm going to do a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch, and then I'm going to add on my straps and straight stitch them on as well. Now this is the front piece of the pants, and you want to make sure that you finish these off very well. So this is where I was saying that you could fold and then fold again, and then do a straight stitch all the way down across the bottom to finish up all of our edges. And then once you do that, you will be done. Now if you're going to just do one fold, I suggest that you fold it. You're going to do a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch so you won't have any fraying with this fabric. And you are all finished. This is the pair of pants that I am absolutely loving. This fabric is so lightweight, so breezy, and it's a very casual kind of fabric that you can dress up if you would like. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And as always, you guys, be unique. See you next week.